being outside. Hello guys, Aspen here. I'm out hiking with my Sony CV1. Just enjoying the peace of nature and everything's around me. It's quite grey and dull today. It was supposed to be a beautiful day, but that's just the way it is. We can't do anything about it. Today I just want to talk a little bit about my Dji Action 2 and the pros and cons with that camera. I know there have been a bunch of videos out and people are talking about that camera all the time. Some are disappointed and some are really happy with it. I'm a little bit in between so far, but I think that DJI is going to make that camera much better with the updates coming forward. That's what I'm hoping for. But today I just want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons, of course. Just let me grab the camera. I have it here in a little case, which is great, by the way. You can watch my other videos on that. But the Dji Action 2 is quite a different kind of action camera. I know there's been a lot of talk about the camera and the form factor and the magnetic adaptive mount system and all of that, but in my opinion, I really like the form factor of this camera. It's small and it's more or less invisible when you're out filming. Is it an action camera? That can be in discussion. I can understand that people want to discuss that, because the only thing that are waterproof on this camera is actually the camera module. The screen module and the power module are not waterproof, so you have to remember that. So that's a little bit disappointing, I know. But one of the pros with this camera for me is actually the number one pro is the small form factor and that it is so small as it is. Yeah, so the pro number two for me is actually the modular design on this camera and the magnetic mounting system. I really like it. I think it's innovative of DJI to come up with a design like that. People was probably hoping for something else, more similar to the first DJI Osmo Action, which still are an excellent camera, and I still have it and use it quite a lot. But in my opinion, I actually like this design. And the other pro for me, the number three pro, you can say, is actually the wide angle lens on this camera. I know in some occasion it can be too wide. If you're using standard D-warp, it's quite wide. Compared to the GoPro Hero 10. I think actually standard D-warp on the Dji Action 2 is more or less the same as wide on GoPro Hero 10. And in ultra wide it's extremely wide. It's too wide in my opinion on the Action 2. But so that's number three. Number four for me with this camera is actually the normal color profile. I really like the normal color profile on DJI cameras. And that's the same with the first Osmo Action, but I think with the Action 2, it's actually even better. The normal color profile looks more or less the same as nature outside. So I really like the normal color profile on this camera. And number four for me as a pro with this camera is Rocksteady 2.0, which are excellent, much better than Rocksteady 1 or the first version. And I think it's as good as GoPro Hero 10 Hypersmooth 4.0. And number five for me with this camera is actually the design of the camera. It looks really beautiful. It does. It looks more or less like an iPhone, you can say. So it's a beautiful design. It is. And so it's an excellent camera. I can highly recommend it. But let's talk a little bit about the negative things about this camera. And there are a few negative points with this camera. We have to address that. And that's maybe the lack of higher resolution. I was hoping for 5K actually on this camera. 4K looks really, really good. It does. But you can see in some situation when you're shooting in standard D-warp, I think the image is a little bit too soft. I was hoping that it was a little bit more crisp. But what I recommend to do is actually shoot with a wide lens. It seems in a strange way to capture more details when you're shooting with the wide lens. So I recommend doing that. Not ultra wide, but wide looks quite good. And another con for me is actually the battery life. And the battery life on the camera module is about, you can maybe get 15 to 20 minutes with just the camera module. And that's the only thing that are waterproof on this camera. So that's a little bit negative for me, especially when you're out and the weather is bad. And you have to remember, when you're using an action camera, you're using it in different kinds of weather. It's not always sunny, especially here in Norway. So that's a negative thing for me. And another negative thing for me is the transfer from the camera module to the screen or power module when you're transferring a file, because the storage on the camera module is only 22 gigabytes, and that's way too less in my opinion. I was hoping for 50 or 64 or something like that. It's way too little, and the transferring the data from the camera module to the screen or power module takes about 20 to 25 minutes if you're transferring 4K files and around 20 gigabytes. So that's way too slow. And you have to remember, when you're going to transfer files, you're using your camera outdoor in different kinds of weather, and this screen module isn't waterproof. You have to dry your camera and make sure that it's not any wet or dirt or shit on the camera. If not, if there are, you can actually destroy your screen and power module. And another negative things for me that I spotted, and that can maybe be fixed with an update on the camera, is actually Rocksteady in some low light situation. Not extremely low light, but some low light situations. And it seems to me that the image is a little bit jittery and a little bit, it's like it's flashing, especially in the highlights. I am not quite sure why that's happening, and it seems to be happening when you're using lower frame rates if you're shooting in 4K. If you bump up your frame rate to, say, around 60 frames per second, it seems to be a little bit better. I don't know if they can fix that with the firmware update. I really hope so. But yeah, there are some pros and some cons with every action camera. It's the same with the GoPro Hero 10. We're going to talk about that in another video. But overall, I'm really happy with the Dji Action 2. I think DJI make a smart I think DJI made a smart decision when they was creating this kind of modular design with the Dji Action 2. I know it wasn't what people was hoping for, but they are proving that they are taking it to another level. And I think that in the future this camera can actually, it can be possible for DJI to build on this design and make it even better. And we might get a 360 camera to this modular design, and you don't have to buy a bunch of another accessories for this camera. And the camera is a little bit too expensive in my opinion. So if you're buying this camera, I highly recommend getting DJI Care Refresh. 2 years. I think you can switch the camera 3 times a year or 2 times a year, I don't know. And of course you have to buy some accessories to protect the camera. You can watch that video up here or up here, what I recommend buying for this camera. But overall I'm really happy with it. I think it's fun to use, and it's small, and the audio is really good on this camera. So overall I think it's a good camera. If you have the DJI, like the GoPro Hero 10, should you buy an Action 2, or is it any upgrade? No, I don't think so. But it's a kind of different camera that you can catch different footage with it because of the small form factor. So overall I'm happy. I am. So thank you so much for watching my pros and cons with the DJI Action 2. I know there's a bunch of videos, but I really hope you will comment down below and maybe subscribe to my channel. That would be highly appreciated. So this is just a fun hobby for me. So but I'm going to create a bunch of content coming forward. So just leave a comment down below what you want to see. Do you want to see any comparison between different cameras? I have the Action 2, the GoPro Hero 10, the old Osmo Action, Sony FDR, and the DJI Pocket 2. All of them are great cameras. I'm really happy with it. So it fits my style of filming. I'm an outdoor guy that's just having fun. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.